Welcome to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast, where today's top influencers and entrepreneurs on the rise share empowering stories and ninja tips to become the fuel that ignites a positive change in your life. Our guests don't simply coast through life. They don't let difficult situations stop them. They set big goals, keep their eyes on the prize, and they're joining us today to share insider secrets you can use right now to step into your power and live your purpose. Now, here's your host, Christy Ruffino. Do you want to activate your story in business? Would you like to follow Christy Ruffino's step-by-step process to leverage your story and get more clients and make more money? Well, you're in luck, my friend, because after years of development, Christy is holding a virtual 2-hour workshop to walk you through the same system she has used with hundreds of her clients. People who now have 7-figure businesses, speak internationally, and are making a massive impact in the world through the power of their story. By registering and showing up for her Story Activation Clinic, you will walk away with a signature story that will change the course of your business, your life, and most importantly, the lives of so many others. Plus, by taking action today, you get Christy's Story Brand Bio Template to further clarify your message and enhance your brand. Visit www.activatemystory.com for event details and to register.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast. I am Christy Ruffino, and I am super excited to introduce you to my newest friend and newest author in one of our Overcoming Mediocrity books, Kelley Tenny. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, we're going to have so much fun. I know when I first met you and learned what you were doing, I just thought it was a perfect alignment. And I know I've learned a lot from you. And you taught a class in one of my programs, and I know my students just loved what you had to share. And I know everybody on the podcast in the audience today is going to love what you have to share. So let me let the audience know a little bit about you and kind of just set you up so they feel like they know you a little bit like I do. So Kelley Tenny is a lifelong learner, educator, curriculum expert, and course strategist. Kelley has been teaching for over 20 years, empowering others through education. Her desire to empower even more led to the start of Kelley's company, Teach Your Brilliance, and I love that name. She offers curriculum creation and course strategy services to creators, influencers, and experts who are looking to turn their wisdom into wealth. That's powerful. Love that.
Thank you.
So I know I have a little slight edge because I've read your story. I know your story. We've discussed it, and the audience doesn't know your story yet. And your story is your why. It's what brought you to this place in your business. So can you share a little bit about your story?
Sure. I think my story is one that probably a lot of people can relate to in one way or the other. And it basically goes back to the start of my own education. Being raised in a house where academics was very important. I often tell my own children that, my parents raised me where things like going to college was not an option. It was just something you did after high school. I was raised in a very traditional Asian family where academics is something that is, often put on the forefront in that culture. And I can remember being in preschool and getting that gold star or that yellow smiley face sticker, and just how big of a deal it was in my house to have those kinds of accolades, even though I was at a very young age. And so, as I grew up and really learned that grades came first, school came first, one of the things that I really had to strive to do was to continue to excel in school. And as I got older, that meant really learning how to do well in a variety of different teaching environments. And so I like to call myself, like an academic chameleon, because one of the things that took on my end was figuring out how to learn from the teacher that does nothing but lecture, figure out how to learn from the teacher that, puts the book in front of you and says, read the chapter and answer the questions, having to learn from the teacher that maybe is more hands-on and has you doing group work and labs and things like that. And I really had to develop a skill to be able to kind of shift and mold depending on how different people were teaching, because, anything less than an A in my household was like asylum. It was like basically the ultimate disappointment and, the punishment of silence. And so that's really where my story begins, which I think a lot of people actually struggle in school, recognizing that some teachers are their favorite teachers and others are not. And a big part of that is how people teach. And so, that's where my story begins. And, fast forward my way through college, I was on my way to graduating, getting my bachelor's in health education. And the state of California had a teacher shortage at that time. And so, which is really crazy, they were basically hiring anybody with a bachelor's and what they call fingerprint clearance, which meant they've never been arrested. And that at the time was all you needed in order to be a teacher in the state of California. And my mentor knew that I wanted to continue on and get my master's. And she said, hey, you would be a great teacher. You should think about going into teaching, which would be a great job for you that you could still go after, and get your master's in the evening. And so I jumped in. My parents, of course, were thrilled that I was going to get a job right out of college, which didn't hurt. And I ended up in inner city Long Beach teaching 6th grade science, math, and health. And one of the things that I noticed was that the students that I had were all labeled. They were considered at risk. They were English language learners, a lot of the terms we still use in education today. And one of the things that I started noticing as I was teaching was that it really wasn't that these students were less than intelligent. It was that we weren't teaching them in a way that potentially was conducive to how they learn. And unlike myself, who had learned to be this chameleon from classroom to classroom, my students just didn't have the skill. And I really decided to do more intense studies around curriculum and pedagogy and how we teach our students. And really taking a look at how our traditional education system is set up and whether or not it's set up for all the types of learners that we have in the classroom today. I eventually was promoted to oversee the curriculum for Long Beach Unified School District. And once I started having a family, I really wanted a more flexible schedule. And so I started looking at other things that I could do outside of the classroom to kind of be able to be more present for my kids who were really young at the time. And I started dabbling in entrepreneurism and kind of taking a look at like, what are some business options out there? How could I work from home? And I met an amazing business coach who at first I hired as my business coach to help me start my own business. But once we started talking, she was kind of like similar to conversations you and I have had, I think. It's like, well, maybe you could help me. I have some courses, maybe you could take a look at them. And she was like, why don't you do this for a living? And that's kind of where Your Brilliance started, was, someone recognizing that they had courses that maybe weren't as optimal as they could be, listening to my own story about good teaching and education and kind of going through. And I did a course audit for her and I helped her really amplify her course so that more people were completing it. She had bigger success rates. It was more transformative for her participants. And, with that, Your Brilliance was born.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot there. Now, one of the things that I know from my past that I'm sure everybody can relate to is how what you said earlier is we have teachers that we resonated with and subjects or classes that we were able to do well in. A lot of it had to do with what we were interested in, but a lot of it did have to do with the teaching style and how we were able to learn from that teacher. And so now with the boom of online learning for adults, for entrepreneurs, for everything, right? We're able to get an education without getting a degree. And there's so many ways for that. And there are so many teachers out there doing it wrong that I know that was one of the things that I found that was super interesting about what you did, is that there's a method to teaching. You can't just know something and then expect other people to just learn from you through osmosis. You have to be able to share that information in a way that they're able to receive it. And you mentioned the word pedagogy. What is that?
So pedagogy is, educational language, but in simple terms, pedagogy is how we deliver instruction.
Okay.
And, recognizing that, and we'll just go back to traditional education, recognizing that a math teacher has to teach math in a different way than a science teacher is going to teach science. And that science teacher has to teach in a different way than maybe a PE teacher might teach. Some are more instructional, some have to have more systems and processes, where things like science, if we're talking about a lab, it's kind of like inquiry based. It's kind of like, okay, you guys get in there and see what you.
Yeah, hands-on. It's yeah, exactly. More fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the idea of pedagogy. It's recognizing that what we teach really, and how we teach it, really depends on the content in itself. And when you transfer that over to entrepreneurs and, like you said, online courses, I think traditionally people are taught to record a bunch of modules and, deliver it to their community or to their audience. And there really is no thought around pedagogy and if I'm teaching someone, for example, how to find their story, how does that look differently than if I'm teaching someone how to use a platform, for example?
Yep. Okay. Well, this is really good. Now I have a long list of things that I want to dive into after our commercial. So if you don't mind, Kelley, we're going to just take a quick commercial break, and then we will come back and we're going to talk about how to tap into your brilliance and how to teach it in a way that people are going to actually have the transformation that we desire them to have. So hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back.
Do you have a story of courage, strength, and perseverance? Are there people out there who could possibly benefit from the wisdom you gain through your journey? If so, we invite you to join our Overcoming Mediocrity team today. Our authors not only enjoy the benefit of having an Amazon best-selling book easily and economically, they also have the satisfaction of leaving a lasting legacy in the world as their story is distributed to audiences across the globe. Visit OM98.org to learn more. And while you're there, be sure to grab our signature Story Made Easy guide to learn how you can write your story to attract more prospects and serve more clients. Once again, that is www.omapply.org.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is Christy and Kelley Tenny. We're having a fun conversation about teaching your brilliance. So the first question I have, Kelley, I know I've got a whole bunch of things written down, but if somebody is listening to this and maybe they don't necessarily know what their brilliance is, how can they tap into that? How can they have some sort of direction?
I love that question. And this is such a core foundation of why I founded Teach Your Brilliance. You mentioned earlier about, we're in this online space and people have so much access to information. And I really think we can change education as we know it if people stepped into their brilliance, decided to teach what they had, and, did it in an educationally sound way. And so the first thing I would say around tapping into that brilliance is, considering your expertise. Really think about, what are those things, not just that you're passionate about, but what are those things that that you can pass on to others? And obviously, I believe that everybody has expertise, and you don't necessarily have to be a certified coach, or you don't necessarily have to have a degree in something, right? You just need to have your own story, your own thing that you could, teach others. And I saw a video the other day, which kind of addresses this when we're thinking about expertise and the big picture of what your brilliance actually is, that whole strategy behind not just a course, but your whole curriculum, everything that you put out there, from your online courses to your workshops, to your podcasts, to your social media content. But they were talking about how, if you want to teach people on a scale of 1 to 10 to get to a level 3, you don't need to be a level 10 expert, and I love that. And truth be told, in the classroom, when I started teaching, I was not set out to be a math teacher, yet I found myself teaching 6th grade math. And there were times where I was like, I don't need to know trigonometry. I just need to know a little bit more than this method of what I'm actually teaching my students. And I think that's true for everybody. So the first thing is, again, stepping into that expertise and having that bigger picture of, what is the big idea, not just this one thing that you want to teach, but what is that umbrella theme of what it is that you actually stand for and what you're teaching.
So I love that you brought that up, because I know the coaching field is huge, and it continues to keep growing at an exponential rate. And I love the fact that you mentioned that you don't have to have a coaching degree. I mean, I think at least what I've been doing is helping women turn their mess into their message and then monetize that. And we've all gone through something in our life that we realize, well, that happened for a reason. I want to teach other people from that journey. Now, not everybody has a business doing that, but we share that wisdom with people we know, or people we cross paths with, or people will connect us. I know somebody that's going through what you went through. Can you talk to them? And I love how people are taking that pain and turning it into the purpose, like the purpose for their life, and creating a business helping others. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, because if you are listening right now and you think, well, I would love to help somebody do this one of these days, well, don't wait for one of these days to happen. Get that wheel going, like do what you can to get that started, because there's somebody right now that desperately needs your help. And every moment that you delay helping them or trying to help them is another day that they're suffering. So I just want to point that out also, because I know when I shared my story the first time somebody came and told me how my story helped them, it really, filled my heart. And I wish I would have had the wisdom from somebody else that had already gone through the journey I was going through. So there is I believe, a degree of life, right? We get a degree going through the hard knocks of life.
Yes.
Wanted to make sure that is really, really cemented in, because I know that is one of the biggest questions that people ask me as well. I love to do this, but I am not a coach. I don't have a degree. And that's where you come in, because you help them transfer that wisdom into the transformational experience for their person, or for their audience, or the people that can help them. But then now I want to go to the fact that you mentioned how we only have to get them from one step to the next. And I think that's the other problem people have, is they have all of this information in their head. They don't know how to organize it in a way. And they also sometimes want to just dump all of that knowledge out, and it's overwhelming for people.
Right.
So there's got to be some sort of a curriculum formula. Like, how do we take all of this wisdom, put it together in a way that will take somebody on a journey?
That's a really good question. And that, that moves into you've touched actually upon a lot of what I'm going to share is how you should be teaching your brilliance. And, to answer that question, I think it's important to recognize that the old way of doing courses, and I keep seeing this ad he's a course creator, but it says, all you need is your content and a computer, and you have your next best-selling course. And I'm like, well, you do need content and a computer, but that's not all you need. And I think what you mentioned around, the thing with experts is what I think is easy is not easy to other people.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, I can sit here and I can say like, okay, this is how you create your curriculum and this is how you're going to build a course. And I could probably talk about that all day. And to me, it seems really simple, but I have to recognize, and this is where education comes in, you don't teach people addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division all in the same week. right? Like they have to master addition before they can move into subtraction. They have to know addition and subtraction before you can teach them multiplication.
Right.
And, a mathematician can do all of that, in a heartbeat, but we have to recognize as experts that because it becomes easy to us, it does not mean it comes easy to our audience. And so,
well, and that's a good point, because sometimes the thing that we're so good at that we take for granted is the thing that we should be teaching. And we don't
right,
recognize that. We think, oh, well,
right.
doesn't everybody know that?
Yes. Yes, I love that. That's such a big conversation. When I talk to people about like, what is your content? And I'm like, well, this should be one module, like how to get started. And they're like, really? That's so simple. And I'm like, well, it's not to everybody else. And so, what I would say is start short. One of the biggest things that we've missed, I think, in the online course space is the concept of microlearning. And microlearning has been part of the conversation in traditional education for years. And that's the concept that our brains learn better in like 10 to 15-minute chunks.
Okay.
So if you've ever been on a 2-hour webinar and you
Oh.
start fiddling around, or, you're like, oh, I've zoned out. It's not because it's necessarily the content. It's because our brains need those short bite-sized pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been taught like that, a lot of content equals value.
Right. Like more is better.
Totally. And it's not better if it doesn't
Ah.
make a transformation or if nobody can learn from it. So I would say, the biggest thing is to start short. If you have a course, maybe like Christy, if you want to share your process on how to, activate your own story, and that process has 6 steps, instead of creating a long 6-step online course, maybe just create a short series of videos around step 1.
Right.
Just to get people started. Maybe it's 3 10-minute videos instead of a 30-minute video, recognizing that once they are through step 1 and they're like, okay, I have this, they're going to come back and they're going to ask for what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really big piece, I think, in what I look like, or what I look at, and how we can like disrupt this old thinking around courses have to be 8 weeks and they have to have hour-long videos and they have to do all the things, because it's not the case. And, we're in this different time now of just time is precious and we're used to being online, but, it's also the fact that our brains will learn better with that short type of content.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so that's where the strategy comes in. It's recognizing that you don't have to teach it all at once, but you should have a strategy of, if I'm going to teach them this first part of it or introduce them to this concept, what's going to come next for them.
Right. Yeah. It's about their journey. And we have to kind of look at it from their perspective on what how they're receiving the information and what little baby steps they need to take.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, this was a lot of good stuff. Do you have anything else you want to share about this process? Because I know you have a free gift that you want to.
I do have a free gift. And, something that you said a little while ago that I wanted to address is recognizing that we all have something to teach. And, it could be something that you have a degree in or you're an expert in, but it also could be something that you've learned from your own life experience or your own story. As you know, Christy, I just, went through a breast cancer journey, and I'm certainly not a medical doctor and I'm not an expert in breast cancer, but I definitely know that what I've gone through, I can help other women who are going through the same thing. And it's important for everybody to step into their brilliance and to really like take their story and recognize that their story is a lesson, like you said, for somebody. Somebody is praying for a solution that you potentially hold.
Yeah.
And so, along with the idea of just getting started, start now, and you can start in short bite-sized pieces. My free gift is called 5 Simple Steps to Creating a Micro Course.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, and a micro course is a course that has a series of trainings that are all under 15 minutes, which means it's super friendly for not only the person viewing the course, but for those of the people that are recording and actually filming. I know you've got online courses, and the time it takes to sit and do full modules can kind of be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So this is a great way for people just to kind of test the waters, to get out there and to start small with a concept, or, even something around their story that they've learned that they can teach others.
Okay. So you're going to be able to, in that little micro course, or in your is it a micro course that you're sharing?
It is. It's a micro course on micro courses.
Yes, I got it. I have a program that teaches people how to create a program. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So in your micro course, you're going to give our audience the free, basically you're going to take them on a journey for free on how that they can learn, is it the logistics of what they need to do to create the course and put it all together so that way they can use it in their business. Love that.
Yeah. It's simple. It follows my process, my blueprint that I use. It's 5 really easy steps. All the modules are short and sweet. So I think people will love it. I get a lot of great feedback on that. And it's going to give some actionable steps that people can do to get started.
Perfect. All right, Kelley. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I always love talking to you, and I've also loved seeing you on your most recent journey, and how you're still making a huge difference. You're showing up, you're sharing, and you're definitely a good role model for me. And I know a lot of the other women in our book have kind of said the same thing. So it's been really
thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, if you want Kelley's micro course on how to create your own micro course, you can get that link in the show notes on whatever platform you listen to your podcast. And of course, like I always ask, if you learned something today, please share it with a friend, because we do retain more when we teach others and we share that wisdom with other people. So not only will you be helping yourself, but you'll be helping them. And of course, also, if you like our show, please give us a little review, a thumbs up, rate, subscribe, do whatever you can to show us some love, because the more support we get from our audience, the better chances we have of continuing to get great guests like Kelley on the show. So thanks, everybody. And thanks especially Kelley.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Overcoming Mediocrity podcast, where we believe that everyone can have the business and life of their dreams once they've learned the art of mastering their story. Mastering our stories is the key to everything we want in life. Our stories can either hold us back or they can propel us to new heights. We can choose. You can choose. Choose to overcome mediocrity with us. Let's achieve greatness together. To learn more, visit www.overcomingmediocrity.org. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.